guys, my name is Anna, you're watching simcue, and without further ado, let's get into this video. So today we are building a bakery with a windmill. A windmill that I'm actually quite proud of, even though it was a little bit difficult figuring out how it should be placed. I think I redid the beginning of this build like 3 to even 5 times, just trying to get everything right. I started out trying to make the windmill with rounded walls. I thought that made sense for a windmill. But rounded walls, they just never really work for me. I often find that they are either too small or too big, and I just know that they are hellish trying to furnish, like they're so glitchy. So I completely skipped out, and we're just going to pretend that this octagon is actually more like circular. And I think the reason why I also struggle is because a windmill is technically quite big, but I didn't want it to look too big in comparison to the rest of the building. So it's really about figuring out the balance between those two. But we are already on to actually building the windmill. And for this, I used this column that comes with City Living. I was quite lucky that it did have this one like neutral color. And then I used these like trellis parts that comes with Eco Lifestyle that also come in a darker wooden color. And I gotta say, I felt a little bit silly because I had to look up how old windmills look, because I obviously had like an image in my mind, but I was like, this doesn't really look right. And in my head, I thought this was like canvas, like a kind of fabric, but most of them seem to be these wooden parts that was obviously at the right angle. I didn't go too much into that detail. I'm also wanted the overall look to be right. And I don't know if you noticed that originally I placed both of them like underneath the columns, and then I looked at a picture and realized that they should obviously all be placed on like the same side, so all to like the left. So I went back and changed that, and now I'm just playing around with the tool mod, which is always a very powerful tool but a very tedious tool. It's just going back and forth trying to get the angle right so that they were in the end placed in the right position. But I really think it ends up looking quite nice, really nice, if I do say so myself. To begin with, this was just an idea. I had no idea how I was actually going to pull it off, but I really like how it turned out in the end. So since this was now complete, I was a little bit worried that if I made any other changes that I might go in and delete parts of this, so that's why I just quickly saved it as a room, and I very much recommend that you do it as well. If you're fiddling around with something and you finally get it right, save it, because you never know if the game is just going to delete part of your build. So we've moved on to the extension that is like at the end of the bakery, and this is going to be the actual house. For this build, I imagine that it was going to be like a small business. So you would have a family, move them in here, and then have one of your sim open up a bakery. Now I'm just going to place some furniture just to get an overall idea of the layout. This is obviously not the furniture that we're going to keep, and that is why we're already moving on to the wallpaper. And we are, of course, going back to the very safe, very nice get together wallpaper. It just works so well for all of these buildings. I feel like it just always end up looking really nice, and I really like that we have so many individual wallpapers so that you can really make a custom look and decorate and make it seem like there are a lot of like supporting beams. So here the first floor had kind of like a bump out, but I do go and more so change it to a balcony. But the reason why I did this in the first place is because a lot of the reference that I looked at, and also if you just look at a lot of films that are supposed to be going on like medieval times, you will see that a lot of the houses are actually bigger on the upper floor than on the ground floor. And I would assume that the reason for this is like in other countries where there were a certain time where buildings were taxed based on how much the ground floor actually covered, and not so much on the upper floor. So that's why you will see a lot of old buildings that have these bump outs and balconies, because they weren't taxed, but it was a way to get more space. I at least know that this was a common thing during the Roman Empire, so you will see a lot of old builds where they are very narrow at the bottom, and then they have these bump outs and balconies on the upper floor. I know that stores and houses in Kyoto, Japan were taxed based on how wide they were, like how much of the house house was actually connected to the road, and that's why you'll see these very narrow houses that are then quite long or deep, like quite skinny. And I think it's just really interesting that houses around the world, depending on when they were built, had different layouts based on the taxation. You can really tell that people have at all times tried to save as much money as possible. So for a while now, I have been struggling with picking a wallpaper for the chimneys. I was just going through so many of the stone wallpapers, and then also tested it on the windmill because I knew that I wanted the windmill and the chimneys to match. And I realized that a lot of the stone wallpaper actually looked really weird on the diagonal part because it would just like stretch to the wallpaper and make the stone look really wonky. So I ended up settling on this base game one that just have these slim stones going all the way around, and I thought that that looked quite nice and the shading matched quite well with the get together wallpaper. So I tried out this cottage living fence for this part of the windmill that I assume is just for like maintenance so you can go around. But I actually ended up going back to the base game one because it felt a bit more substantial. And then I chose some thatch roof from cottage living for the main building or the bakery. And then some tile roofing that's just base game for the windmill and the house. And I went with tile because I felt like thatch roof on a windmill was maybe a little bit too weird. And then I decided to also add the tile for the house, so at least those two were kind of matching. So here I'm playing around with the foundation because I wanted the building to have the foundation from Get Together that matched the wallpaper. And then I decided for the porch or terrace, whatever you want to call it, to have these wooden posts that would be supporting it because that was also going to have a wooden floor. Now I was struggling a little bit with the color of the foundation because I couldn't really figure out what wooden tone would match better. One of them felt like it matched the wallpaper but then didn't match the flooring. The other one seemed to match the flooring but not match the wallpaper. And I could not find something where both the wallpaper and the foundation and the flooring actually matched each other. So this is what we ended up with. Now, because of how I did the foundation, I had this weird glitch in the fence, which I just covered up with some columns and then added some spandrels. And I feel like that looked really nice. And I then dragged out the roof section, just holding down Control C. I can just drag out only one side of it. So it has this overhang and I think it looked really nice. Now you will see me go back and forth a little bit here with the doors and the windows. I really wanted to try and use these ones from Growing Together. Even though they might not match a fully medieval kind of vibe, I thought they looked kind of cute for the build, but I ran into the same issue where the swatches just did not match. One of the swatches did have a wood color that matched, but then the surrounding stone was very, very light and didn't match the building at all. And the one that had a darker stone frame that actually matched quite nicely then had a too orangey wood color, so it just did not work out. I tried it multiple times. I cut out parts of me trying it, but it just never really worked out. So here I am adding some bay windows from Get Together, and if we are trying to be realistic for a while, these would follow the same principle and not add any extra tax to the house. And in the past I haven't really been using the windows because they haven't really matched the kind of builds I have been doing earlier on, but it was really fun to actually get to play around with them, and I was happily surprised now that I have talked about swatches that the ones from Cottage Living and the ones from Get Together actually had swatches that matched each other quite nicely. So I can sort of mix and match the windows and get some different styles around the place. And then I thought it was going to be a nice touch to just add windows all around this lower part of the windmill. We're getting into some flooring, and I actually did not expect this to be an issue for me, but I found out that the flooring looked very different whether it was indoors or outdoors, because to begin with I wanted them to match, but I ended up just having two different flooring, which makes sense. You don't have to have the same flooring on the inside and on the outside, but originally I wanted them to match and it just did not work because they looked so different depending on the lighting. So we're just getting some wallpaper down, and then in a moment you will see the beginning of my struggle getting this coffee bar to actually match the aesthetic. I know that this is obviously very modern, but I just thought it would be a cute addition that you could sell coffee along with the cakes that you might be making. And I knew I wanted these display cases in the front. You probably saw me place them way back, and in the beginning I was trying to use a spandrel, but that made the inside lighting outdoor lighting, and it made it just really weird. So instead I decided to go with archways, and then I just put columns on top, both on the inside and the outside, and I think like that looked pretty nice. So customers should be able to just pick up a cake and buy them from the display, but the idea is that your sim would be like selling them over the counter. This is the real struggle with this coffee bar. I was kind of missing like one tile, and there was just not a single like kitchen cabinet that really matched. So I ended up finding these boxes that came with, I think, Businesses and Hobbies, and then placed multiple on top of each other, making sure that none of them had like a visual glitch. And then I called it a day because I went back and forth so much. I had to cut out a large portion because I just could not make it work, and it bothered me so much because there was this counter that came with Businesses and Hobbies, and that matched in color but did not match in size. And then there was this sink, and even though it would be maybe a little bit of a weird place for a sink, I thought, okay, well, a sink will work, but that was not like deep enough. Nothing worked. So we just have these weird boxes that just function as another like table, and we're going to place a little bit of decoration on them later. So you've just seen me place all of these furniture with this light green swatch, and also these base game couches, and in between those I added 2 boxes of cross stitch because I believe that you can add that to the business so that your customers will also be cross stitching, which I thought was kind of cute since we're already using cottage living. So I knew that I wanted a cupcake machine. I was struggling a little bit with where to place it because I didn't really want to take up any space from the display counters, and then I ended up just placing it like right in front. I don't even think that I really noticed, but I kind of wanted the kitchen in this end because I didn't want customers to really be able to see the kitchen, even though I wanted it to be very like open plan. So if I put the kitchen in this end, that meant that the cupcake machine would then go in the other end. If it bothers you, you are of course fully allowed to just move things around, delete things that you don't like. It's up to you. If you want to play with it, changes as much as you want to, but that was my idea at least. So I went with the kitchen from Cottage Living. I really like how the cabinets and the sinks work together, and then I'm just placing a few additional tables because I imagine that if you were taking bread out the oven, you'd want somewhere to like quickly place it. We've moved on to the outside, where I also just added a few pieces of furniture and a chess table because I feel like for so many things in The Sims 4 you're going to need a chess table. So you can add it to the business, you can also just use it for your own Sims of course, but I thought it was just a nice little detail. And we're quickly moving on to the house, where I added this kitchen from Horse Ranch. If you feel like you need space, you can just delete this kitchen. Like there is a fully functional big kitchen in the business, but I just thought it made sense if this was a separate house that was also going to have a kitchen of its own. And moving on to the bathroom, since I was already using Get to Work for the display cases, I decided to also use the Get to Work toilet just because it's like so flat. So I felt like it was more like a compost kind of toilet, looking a bit more like the ones you would have in an outhouse, just due to, yeah, the fact that it's just flat. So that was the one that I went with, and we are now moving on upstairs, choosing fencing, struggling with the swatches, struggling to get the right colors because the staircase is one color, the flooring is another color, the wallpaper almost looked like a third color. I don't know. If you can find a better match, be my guest. But this is at least what I came up with, and I purposely did not put any railing on the stairs. I actually haven't really done that in a lot of the builds, and I feel like it's just because you wouldn't really care that much about safety, so there's no railing. These doors are from City Living. I really like that they are quite worn, like they have scratches in them, which I felt was fitting for the house. And then the couches, I believe, are from either Horse Ranch or Cottage Living. I actually don't remember, but I just like that they were wooden couches but still had a little bit of a pillow, because after all this is a living room, so I didn't want it to just be the like regular wooden couches that I would otherwise use, because they are more like bench like, and I felt like this was a little bit more cozy. Because even though a lot of the builds that I do are like medieval fantasy inspired, I didn't want to go like all in and just strip them from a lot of furniture because it's supposed to look like medieval times. I still want them to have cute furniture that could like somewhat match. Like this is not fully the medieval times, it's just medieval inspired. So now might be a good time to mention that a lot of the builds that I do here on this channel are working with like a limited pack selection, but I actually didn't do that with this one. Since I was already using City Living and Eco Lifestyle just to make the Windmill, and I think like those packs would otherwise not really fit this build, I just felt like pretty much going all out. Now it's not like all out, but I think I used like over 10 packs. Like I didn't really put a limit on it. I didn't really care too much, and eventually I just sort of settled on a certain amount of packs, and then there was only maybe like once or twice where I was like, okay, I don't need to add this item. So I'm a little bit unsure actually of how many packs it uses, but it definitely uses more than my other builds. We're now moving on to some lighting, which is sometimes a little bit difficult because I find that a lot of the like old school lights or like lanterns don't really actually provide a whole lot of lighting, and I am at least someone that if I'm actually going to play, I need a lot of light. I cannot see what is going on with my Sims if everything is just these like really dimmed lights. So I added some really strong lights behind the cabinet so that they're sort of just covered by the cabinet, and then I did find some lights that actually I think properly light up the space, so it shouldn't be an issue. So just quickly adding some corbels for a bit more support for this bump out on this building, and then I went in and added a ladder because I remember that I had a first and second floor to this windmill, but there was no way of getting up there, so I just added a ladder so that it is accessible. And I actually haven't added anything to the second floor, so it's completely up to you how you want to use it. Maybe you want to add a secret bed and have someone sleeping up there, or maybe your sim just need a little bit more space for some like activity that you want to pick up. So the second floor is all yours. We are now going through the catalog as per usual, pulling out anything that might match this build with the filters of the many packs that I have picked by now. We go through the regular catalog and we go through the debug catalog, and then we figure out where everything should be placed later. So because this part was so long, I did just skip ahead so that wouldn't give you too much of a headache because there is a lot. So what we're doing right now is that we are building a custom shelving situation for all of this bread that is supposedly going to be for sale. So some of this bread is decorative pieces and some of the bread is from the debug menu. So I'm actually a little bit unsure if some of the bread is going to like turn bad. I don't really know. I will test that. I know that the one here with the little cloth on top is a decorative piece, so that can stay there at all times. And it's because I really wanted to create these shelvings where it constantly looked like you had bread for sales, so that you didn't have to actually keep up with baking just so much bread, because the Sims would obviously just buy it and then all of your shelves would be empty, and I feel like that would be kind of a shame. So hopefully all of the bread on the shelves can stay. I will check that out. Now the muffins that I am placing both on the tables and here on the counter, I do think that they might be going bad and that your Sims will have to clean them up, but I am honestly just going to leave them because I think they look so cute, and it would be easy for you to later on, if you have to clean up all the muffins, to just add some more of that breath with the cloth on or add anything else that you really want to. So I think I'm going to keep them, but I do think that they are a debug item that is going to turn bad, unfortunately. Now, even though I love reaching the point of decorating, I also have to admit that this one was a lot. There was just so much to decorate. There were so many small pieces. I really like how it turned out, but it does mean that in a moment the editing will be a bit more rough because we have to just kind of quickly go through parts of this because it was just getting way too long. I think this is the build where I've spent the longest on like actually building so far, like figuring out where all of the walls, the wallpapers, the windows, how everything should look. And then also the build that's probably taking me like the longest to decorate. It's kind of insane. I like how it turned out, but we're just going to quickly go through parts of it because otherwise it would just be too much. So hopefully you are watching this thinking that it's not like too bad, but remember I had to edit this. There was so much footage. It was really a hurdle, but I think it turned out pretty alright. So here we have one of my favorite debug items from Cottage Living. This is a little signpost, and all of the individual signs have different text, and I just thought it was so cute, especially since this bakery where I placed it is kind of central in the city, so it made sense there would be this signpost posting to the barracks that we did last week, and the Alchemist bar that we did the week before that, and of course builds that I have planned for the future. So I thought it was a very nice, cute little detail. So I found this rounded fence from Outdoor Retreat, and I don't really know if, like, when I look through the footage, again, I don't know if it actually matches that well, but I just thought it was so cute. I think I really like using these rounded curved pieces because it's otherwise so rare. Like, I cannot make this with fences myself. I can only really use the debug fences for this. So I thought it ended up looking really cute, even if it might be like a little bit off. It might not match the building the best, but I think it looked nice. So we will now be getting into the terrain paint. Here I tried all of the different stone terrains to figure out which one will work the best. I started out with trying this one, but I then ended up going back to the one from Get Together. So this is supposedly the one that should match the stones that we actually have surrounding the lot, but they are like too small and too light, which really bothers me, and that's why I tried out so many different stone flooring, but it just didn't look as good. So I ended up going back to the terrain paint. We did that all over the place. I do think as a whole it looks nice, but I really wish that it actually matched the surrounding area. And you might think, if you watch some of my other videos, thank you very much, that terrain paint means that we are at the end, but we are not. No. We got more details coming, like this trim that is from like Get Together. It's just a decorative piece. You can find it like in the statue section, but I feel like it works very well for just sort of trimming off the terrain paint that otherwise can look a little bit weird where it changes from like stone to grass. And then of course going in with some dirt, darkening the edges. And I also knew that from the front of the lot to the actual house, the Sims would obviously not walk on the very edge, so I do end up going in and making this little like pebble pathway kind of situation going on, and I tried really hard to blend it into the rest of the terrain. It did take me 2 tries, but I think we got something that looked quite nice and like it had been used a lot. Like this was just people walking back and forth, so a little bit worn down pathway, which I think suited the place. And I found this terrain paint that is like a mix of dirt and grass, and I found that if I put it on very lightly, it actually started to look really nice and like it was just adding some texture to the lawn. So here from the back I changed the lighting just a couple of times because I felt like it made sense that the more shadowy areas throughout the day would have some darker grass, and then the lighter grass would be where the sun is constantly hitting, because obviously this windmill casts some pretty deep shadows. But I will admit that for the planter boxes I didn't care too much about like where the sun was. I just placed them where I feel like they look good, and then we're going in to do a bit more landscaping. I just want to say to whoever watches my videos, comments on them, thank you so much. It makes me genuinely happy, and I hope that a lot of you just get joy from the videos, from the builds, use them. Like that's why I'm making them. I don't really play a whole lot with builds myself, so I just hope that other people can enjoy them. And some of you leave some very nice comments. Thank you very much. I am very lucky to be in a spot where I can get back to every single one of you who comments. So if you ever want to leave a comment, I will get back to you within probably like 1 to 2 days. So please do feel free to leave constructive criticism, anything you would like to see in the future, requests you might have for builds. I will try to get around to everything. I'm just having so much fun building, and it is even more fun when there are actually people like interacting with what you're doing. So thank you very much. Now I will admit that this video is pre-recorded. When this is posted, I will be back from holiday, and by then I kind of hope that we're at like 50 subscribers. I know that to a lot of people that is a small number, but to me it's a big number. I like to calculate by like classrooms, and I'm like, that's 2 full classrooms. 50 people, you cannot squeeze 50 people into one classroom. So I'm like, That's a lot. So just thank you to whoever watching, commenting, liking. It actually matters to the person behind the screen. So thank you. We now have this last little small detail here with the windmill, because I realized that I've forgotten to actually add like an axis, something that would make it turn. It will not turn. There's not an actual animation to this windmill. It is just items so that it looks like a windmill. And then I did this little roofing detail for the bump out we did at the beginning, and then it has come to an end. I know this was a long one, so thank you so much for staying all the way through. I wish you a lovely day. I hope to see you next time, and bye!